Welcome back, and focus today. Well, here's a question. Do you think peace and liberty and freedom can come to the Middle East? I'm delighted to have with us today Joshua Muravchik. He is a Bush Institute Fellow in Human Freedom, and his updated book offers an eye-opening account of how men and women in the Middle East dream of living in free societies. And Joshua, nice to have you with us. Where are you?
Oh, thanks very much. I'm delighted that you're having me on. I'm at my home in Wheaton, Maryland.
Wheaton, Maryland. Okay, nice to have you. The magic of Skype. Well, your new book, Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and boy, do you think democracy can come to the Middle East?
Well, I'm sure it can. The question is how long it will take. Democracy started out in the world just as recently as 1776. The United States, the newborn United States, was the very first one. And over the last, whatever it's been, 240 years, 230 years, which is not a long time in the span of history,
right,
most of the world has come to having democratically elected governments. The Middle East has been the biggest exception to that, but I think it will eventually follow in the train.
Wow, that's quite a statement, because there seems to be so much blocking it now. We've been watching all the things there in Egypt and Syria and around. We're thinking, how can they exist when they're fighting among themselves?
Well, what you're saying is real. There's a tremendous amount of violence in that culture. There's a tremendous amount of absolutism. You know, I'm absolutely right and you're absolutely wrong, and let's fight it out to the death to see to see who comes out on top. There is that, and that has to be overcome to have democracy, which is the essence of compromise and live and let live taken to a political level. But you know, democracy has come to places where people really didn't expect it, to most of Asia by now, with China being the really big exception to that, but most of the countries of Asia. It's come to a significant part of Africa, even dirt poor countries that are struggling and miserable in many ways. The Middle East has been a terrible exception, but you know, I think we saw something very, very hopeful just in this last period, which was, it seemed to me and to many observers as if the overthrow of the old regime in Egypt was going to lead to a takeover by Islamists who would impose on that country some new kind of very controlling authoritarian rule.
Right.
And lo and behold, the Egyptian people just rose up against it, said, we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood to rule us. There's still a long way from democracy there, but I thought it was a very hopeful development.
Well, there's a couple things that come out of this, Joshua. One is, I would assume that the digital technology, allowing people to really see what the rest of the world is like, fuels some form of democracy or freedom, or at least the hunger for it. And the other thing is that can their overriding ideology, if not theocracy, allow for it?
Well, I think there can be democracy in countries that are predominantly Muslim. If we're just talking about whether the religion of Islam can be reconciled with democracy, I think the answer is yes, although it's probably not as easy as having democracy in a Christian country, because Christianity has built into it the idea of give unto Caesar what Caesar and unto God what is God. That is the separation of church and state. And Islam does not have that at all. So that makes it more difficult. But still, we have countries like Indonesia, which are predominantly Muslim countries, which are practicing democracy. And there are a handful of others like that, not in the Arab world. The Arab world has been the most difficult or recalcitrant. Last point, I'm sorry to be so long-winded. I don't think democracy is compatible with the ideology of Islamism.
Yeah.
I think it can happen in a Muslim country, but I think Islamism of the Muslim Brotherhood or of Al Qaeda or of the mullahs in Iran is an absolutist ideology which is not compatible with democracy.
When Middle Easterners dream of democracy or freedom or liberty, what's that dream look like to them?
Well, it doesn't look so different than it looks to us. The book that I've written is about finding people who have been spending their lives in those countries fighting for democracy and getting to know them and learn their histories. And I've written small biographies of how they came to be the way they are. And they have an idea of what freedom is, that you have to respect other people's differences. You have to be free to think your own thoughts, worship God in your own way. They really do get that. I'm not saying that everyone in those countries gets that by any means, but there is a group of people in those countries who see it pretty much the way we do. Sometimes they see it the way we do because they had the opportunity to come for a couple of years as students or something to our country and see it in action and think, wow, why can't we live that way? They came to, right. I spoke to people in Saudi Arabia, for example, which is such a different place, who had the opportunity and said to me, gee, the best years of my life were those couple of years I spent in Connecticut, or things like that.
Do you think these patriots of freedom are willing to pay the ultimate price?
Well, the people that I've chosen as sort of subjects for my book are willing. Some of them, I'm sad to say, have come awfully close. There's an Iraqi man that I got to know, and he's not at the very top echelon, but he's a figure. He's a political player, as they say, in Iraq, and he had so many attempts on his life that in one of them, they shot up a car that was his car, but he wasn't in it, but his two 20-some-odd-year-old sons were in it, and they were both killed. So, in a sense, that's a bigger price than giving your own life. I think if you asked him, he would have rather it been him than his son. So these are people who are prepared to really give everything for
wow. That is, again, the book is called Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and you may want to check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. Joshua, what do you think's ahead? I mean, now that things have been overturned again in Egypt, what do you think's going to happen? Because that is a tremendous movement in the right direction, but will it be harnessed to continue in the right direction?
I wish I felt I knew the answer to that question. I think it will be in the long run. How bumpy the road will be in the short run, I'm not sure. But this is a tremendous blow to the Islamists, not only in Egypt. We had the 2011, we had the overthrows of old dictators, and then we had in several countries the Islamists immediately come to the fore and take advantage of the situation. And many people, including many people in those countries, were being very rueful and pessimistic and saying, instead of an Arab Spring, we're going to have an Islamist winter. But lo and behold, the Egyptian people just said, no, we don't want that. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe the best case scenario is that we really will get to democracy in Tunisia. Tunisia is a small country, but it could be the model for the others. The Islamists are in the lead in Tunisia, but they did not have as much control as in Egypt, and I'm sure they are reeling from what's just happened in Egypt, and I'm sure the non-Islamists are really feeling energized there, and that might make for a successful consolidation of democracy in that one country, and it could stand as a model to the others.
You know, it seems it was more violent post-revolution than it was during the revolution, and to me, that set a whole new level of example as well.
Well, it's so often true. The thing I kept trying to say to my Arab friends is, don't be so happy that you had revolutions. Revolutions are usually bad things. They usually make things worse. And a peaceful, incremental change is almost always better than having a revolution.
Yeah. Well, again, the book is entitled Trailblazers of the Arab Spring, and check it out online at Barnes & Noble, or online at Amazon, and I think you'll find it to be a fascinating read. I love your positioning on this, Joshua. Keep up the good work, and let's have you back soon.
Well, I'll be glad to. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for having me on.
All right, talk to you soon. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.